Hi everyone, welcome to this elective as part of our management program, Making the Transition from Peer to Supervisor. In this elective, we're going to take the next 60 minutes or so to talk through this idea of going from a peer and working with your coworkers and working together to being their supervisor and managing that transition, managing the difficulties that come with being a friend with someone to getting to the point where you now have to supervise them and the relationship is different. How do you make that transition effectively? What are things that you need to keep in mind, and what are things that you should do, and in what order, to make the transition as effective as possible? So, first things first. It's like any other morning. Your alarm goes off, and you weren't quite ready for it. You begin the internal battle of getting up versus hitting the snooze, and you know it's not really a battle. You know that the snooze is going to win. Every time. And it does. Just like any other morning. You have a routine, and it's time to get at it. Whether your morning routine is thoughtful and well-planned, or it's always a near panic because that stupid alarm is never loud enough, there's likely a pattern to what you do. Yet, this is not like any other morning. It may feel like it at home, yet there's this knot in your stomach because you know that today work is different. When you walk in, your hello will sound the same, but it will be heard differently. Your walk to your desk may be the same, but it will appear different. The conversations you have will sound the same, but the results will be different. And that's what makes this workday different. You see, when you transition to a new position, things are different. We know this, and we have to expect this, but it's on you to manage that difference. A transition to a supervisor has a different set of rules, especially when you started out as a peer. There's a relationship that already exists that simply with a title change completely changes that relationship. You are going from a peer to a supervisor. You are now going into a completely different type of change, and your ability to manage that will set the stage for how well you can be a supervisor. So today, as a part of this elective, we're going to talk about a couple different strategies as it pertains to how to make this transition effectively from being a peer to a supervisor. And we're going to talk through three things very specifically. The first things we're going to talk about is what you should do first. What are some practical things that I should do as I'm making this transition from a peer to supervisor? Then we're going to talk about what should I do never. Never should I do what in this transition so that I undermine myself as I'm trying to step into this new leadership model. And then thirdly, what should I do right now as I'm starting to begin this process? If you are already in this position where you are a supervisor and you started out as a peer, you're going to know some of these things that you've done, and hopefully you did them well, but you might hear through some things that maybe you wish you did differently, and that's fine. You are where you are today, so the question is, how can you adapt in the current place that you are? But if you're not in this role yet, if you are surrounded by peers and you're not a supervisor to any of them, but you're hoping that one day you might get to that point, well, there's things that you should be doing now. And these are the things that we're going to talk through. These are the things that we're going to try to work through as we prepare in order to get to that point. So, let's start right at the top. What should you do first? Well, there's a couple things you should do first. Specifically, what are some things that you should do ahead of time? Well, the first thing you should do ahead of time is you should know your business. Know the organization. For us, it's about knowing the credit union. What is our vision? What are our goals? What are our core values? How well do you know the business and what the business is trying to achieve? What is it that we're trying to do in order to be sustainable, but also grow? How well do we know and understand the place where we are currently? Because as soon as you understand the business and how the business is interacting and what the priorities are of the business, the sooner you can get to the point where you know yourself. The better you know yourself, the better that you understand the things that drive you, the things that are important to you, the better you can understand and start to align yourself with the goals of the organization. If you can understand what the vision is and what they're trying to achieve and how they're trying to grow, and you understand what your priorities are, then you can start to match the two. So how do you know yourself? Well, look, you have to understand several things about yourself. Like, what is it that drives you? Or what are the things that you are passionate about? Or maybe what are some things that you find that are an area of expertise for you, that people come to you with questions about, or come to you because your knowledge about, or ask you to show certain things? What are these things about you where you figure that you are able to add value to the organization to push it forward? How well do you know yourself, such that as you understand how well you know yourself and how well you know your organization, you can see how those two things align, such that you can start to plan and adjust to add value with what you bring to what the organization values to grow. So understand the organization, what the priorities are of them. Understand yourself and what the priorities are of you, and how do those two things align such that you can move forward. This is going to make you a more effective supervisor. This is going to make you a more effective leader. This is going to make you a more effective influencer as you understand how those two things gel together. If you aren't quite sure about the things that drive you, or the things that are passionate for you, that align with the organization, I'm going to encourage you to do a couple of things. First, I'll encourage you, if you haven't done it before, consider making a mission statement. Every successful organization that has established some sort of purpose has established that purpose through a mission statement. So why, if an organization does it, why wouldn't we do it as individuals? Build a mission statement for yourself. If you want to also know more about yourself, do a personality profile assessment, do a DISC, do a PI, do something so you get a better understanding and can gauge better for yourself who you are, such that you can understand what drives you in the area, in the parts of you that help you flourish. Understand also your communication style. How do you prefer to communicate, and how do you best understand other people around what types of communication style? The more that you understand these things about yourself, the more that you can be an effective contributor to the organization. You can see how these things align. What should you do after that? Well, lay out your schedule. Lay out a plan. What are you going to do that first day when you walk into that office and you now have that title that has made you different? Even though you look the same, you sound the same, everything appears the same, except that title has made it different. When you're walking in that day, don't walk in aimless. Instead, walk in with a plan. Know what you're going to do. Know what you're going to do specifically in your first day. Be specific. Have that first day lined out with your priorities. I want to make sure I do this, this, and this. The closer you are to that first day, the more specific you have to be. But the farther out you get from that first day with the title of supervisor, the more general you can be with your target dates of what you want to achieve by when. But lay out your plan, lay out your schedule, and stick to it. What else should you do ahead of time? Well, know that you have to drive this. Know that no matter what is happening, that your ability to manage the transition to supervisor has to be driven by you. If you are proactive, then you can remain in control of circumstances in your schedule and what's happening around you, versus being reactive to the fires that come here or there, and then suddenly you're trying to put band-aids on things in order to fix them. So know that you have to drive this. Know that you have to follow your plan and take initiative to do it. Then be confident. Know this, that you are not in this position on accident. People did not throw a bunch of names in a hat and then picked you out and said, you know what, I think you should be the supervisor because, you know what, we picked your name out of this hat. Your name is such and such on this piece of paper, right? It's not how it works. You are here on purpose. So be confident in this. Right? And as we walk through this, as we talk through things that you should be doing first and throughout, and the first week and month and that sort of thing, if you're not in the position yet, if you're not the supervisor, be thinking through these things as we talk about them, and know some of these things you could even start doing before you get the title. You can be thoughtfully preparing and starting to do some of these things, even if you're not in the position yet. Don't be afraid to take initiative. Now, it's your first day. You've walked in the door. You have a plan. Well, what is your plan? Well, it's going to be a couple of these things. Before, however, we talk about what you would do first, let's talk about how do you communicate your position? How do you communicate it to your former peers? Well, ideally, and we'll assume for the purpose of this presentation, that the announcement about your position has already been made. That you are not in the position where you have to go and tell people. Right? And ideally in an organization that is well organized, you do not have to go and make the announcement to say, hey, you know what, tomorrow I just want to let you know everything's changing because I'm going to be your boss tomorrow. That's the wrong foot that you want to start off on. So ideally, somebody else has made the position announcement. Your boss has already said, hey, I just want to congratulate this such and such is going to be the manager, and it's coming from them and it's not coming from you, and that's going to start things off on the right foot. But if you get the opportunity to make the announcement yourself on your own terms, I encourage you to do that. If you have that opportunity, ask to do it and do it individually. Sit down and talk with people privately in a one-on-one situation environment, and give them the opportunity to share privately. So tell them what's happening, tell them the transition that's coming, and then give them some space. Give them the opportunity to talk about it. Right? And then once you have that conversation, ask them not to share it with others so that you can be the one who tells people. And that after you tell everybody, you will make a formal announcement after you've met with everyone. So ask people to respect that, and respect that in the same way that they are hearing it for the first time from you, that you are asking them to do the same thing with other people, and respect that. But the great thing about telling people individually is that it allows them to be able to share concerns privately or congratulate you privately or whatever the case may be, instead of getting a blanket announcement where you tell an entire group and then everybody's looking around to see what everybody else's reaction is to dictate their own. But if you're sitting down and having those one-on-one meetings, it allows them to have a more genuine response and allows you to have a more personal interaction that really gets the relationship between you and that one individual off to a better start. So, have those one-on-one meetings. Then, after the announcement has been made, stick to your schedule. Stick to your plan. If this is the track that you have laid out in front of you, stick to it. Don't deviate from it. Especially if you thoughtfully prepared ahead of time. What are some of the things that I want to do on this first day? Stick to it. Not only is it good just because you will, by the end of the day, you'll have your checklist done and you'll have the things prepared that you want to have prepared, but it also sets a good precedent that you are starting to identify your priorities, and it allows other people who see you, who are going to try to learn who you are and try to get a gauge on what your priorities are. If they see that you're following your schedule, then they know that your schedule, which dictates what your priorities are, becomes a priority to your management style. Other people will fall in line and start to understand that a little bit better. So follow your schedule and stick to your plan. Third thing you should do, once your announcement's been made and once you start to follow your schedule, one of your priorities on your first day should be to call a meeting with everyone. Sit them down and establish the type of relationship you want to have, and communicate that before you start doing it. This is a good opportunity to have the conversation and say, welcome to our new team, welcome to this, and you can start saying some of the things that you want to say. You might not have a long agenda. That's okay. Maybe a lot of the things that you want to do are going to happen through one-on-one conversations, but this is a good opportunity for you to establish some ground rules. What are some things that, ground rules is a negative term, but establish some of the expectations that you have of yourself and that you're going to have of the team and of individuals as we all start to adjust to this new environment. But the more that they hear you say those things in front of a group, as soon as you say in front of the group so that everybody hears these things, there's accountability built into it. So you are now laying out an expectation that you will now have to follow through on in order to maintain credibility. So say things that you know and expect that you can do because they're going to be priorities that you see the value in doing as you lead. Start with your communication style. Then start with the expectations then go to the expectations that you have of yourself. And then the expectations of the team. This can be lighthearted if you want it to be. This can be a little bit more serious in nature. It is probably a little bit better to be more serious in nature. That does set a stronger foundation to work from than being too casual in the beginning. You're setting your boundaries, and a more firm boundaries levels a better expectation for later. But you choose what you want to do because those are the choices that you're making as a leader, and it has to fit you. So once you talk about your communication style, expectation of yourself, expectations of others, then show them that you care, or tell them that you care. Tell them that you have their back, and then be willing to show that. Right? There's a quote that says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Right? This establishes the relationship. This shows them that you care as you look to practice this as you go. Third, next is to lay out your plan. Right? Lay out your plan of what you hope to do over the next several days, weeks, etc., so that people don't necessarily think that you're coming and then you're just going to kind of take things as they come, but that you are here to do things on purpose. You have a plan and you're going to try to follow through on it. And follow through on it is going to help you as you go. But lay out your plan so that your team can see direction, so that as you are trying to align yourself with the organization, its goals, your direct reports can now align themselves with your goals and your plans such that they're working towards that as you're working towards it as well. Lay out the plan. It can be just simply, by the end of next week, I'm hoping to meet with everybody and talk through this and to have more clarity around what we're going to be doing over the next month. It can be something as simple as that, but lay out a plan such that they know what to expect and know what to look forward to. Things are a little bit uneasy in these situations. That's just normal anytime that a change happens. Number 4, and we said this a little bit already, establish your authority and your credibility. In a group, share your vision and be consistent with who you were in the past. There are some things that you are going to be able to subtly change as you go along the way, and that's okay. Those are good things to change as you go, because you can't necessarily just be their peer anymore. So as you establish your authority and credibility, you shouldn't be dramatically different, but you can be a little bit different. But if you're so different as a boss because you now got this title, you're going to undermine your credibility. Have some consistency with who you were in the past. After this meeting is done, after you have met with everybody, set some expectations, and laid out a plan, the next thing that you should do is to meet with your manager. So why should you meet with your manager? Well, specifically, you should find out the expectations of you. And perhaps you know this already. Perhaps when you were interviewing, they were talking through, we'd like to see this as part of the department. We'd like to see this out of the role. And they've talked through those things. But now you're in the role, right? And so now you can be a little bit more practical as far as what are some things that they want to see of you, or what are some expectations of you. So find out in increments of 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. Block it out like that. What does your manager expect to see out of you in this time frame? It helps for you because as you are setting out your plan and what you want to achieve in that same time frame, you want to be sure that you're aligning with what your manager hopes and expects out of you. It's great if you lay out a plan and you think it's all well and good and you're doing all of these things, you feel like you're making good momentum, but if your boss is thinking that you should be doing something else, well then you're completely misaligning and you're completely not doing your job. So meet with your manager, find out what they want or what they expect to see out of you in your first month, 3 months, and 6 months from there. Find out why you're promoted if you don't know already. Be sure to use this as a guidepost for transitioning to a supervisor. Now, once you're out of your first day, you're in your first week, you should accomplish a number of things. Aside from communicating with people about your position, if you had the opportunity to do it, if you didn't have a chance, now is an opportunity for you to sit down and meet one-on-one with everyone on your team. You need to sit down with everyone, have a one-on-one with them, because you're allowing them to have space to talk to you and to be honest. Some people are going to take advantage of this. They might do something highly inappropriate and say, you know what, I can't believe you got this job. Why did you get this job? Right? And while that's highly inappropriate, and you should have a conversation about that and say, you know what, that's not appropriate. But other people are not going to take advantage of it because they're still trying to feel out this relationship. You are my friend, now you're my boss, and I don't quite know how that relationship's going to work. And so they might not take advantage of this space, of this opportunity to talk. That's okay. You're still giving them the opportunity to do that. Give them space to talk, and if they take advantage of it, great. If not, you've given them that space, and that's what you need to do in this moment. Second thing to do in this one-on-one meeting is accept the challenge of knowing the strengths of your direct reports. And accept the challenge of being transparent with yours. These are the things I'm good at, because as soon as you start to identify the things you're good at, what by default, you are exposing yourself in the things that maybe you're not. But for you, one of the things that you need to become better at is you need to become better at knowing the strengths of your team. So accept that challenge. If you don't know their strengths, ask them. What do you think the strengths are that you bring to your position? What do you think the strengths are that you bring to your team? What are some things that you feel like you've done really well over the past year? Know those strengths, because the more you know about the strengths of your team, the more you can leverage that to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. If you don't know their strengths, ask them. 3 is to discover their motivations. As you are looking to understand and know their strengths, use good communication techniques in this one-on-one meeting, right? In this one-on-one, have an uninterrupted meeting space. You know, if it has to be your office, it has to be your office, but put away things that are going to interrupt your meeting. Forward your calls right to voicemail. Turn off your computer screen. Make sure your phone's on vibrate or silent or something like that. But have an uninterrupted meeting space. Go to a conference room, something like that. A place where you feel like you can have a conversation where you can be completely focused on them and them to you. Make sure your eye contact is a suntan, not a sunburn. You're not staring them through to their soul, but it's more sporadic such that they can see that you're thinking through things as you are talking to them. And then pay attention to their body language as it changes. You know, in the conversation, are they finding themselves more relaxed? Are they finding themselves tensing up a little bit more? You know, they never use the back of their seat, or you can see like their body language getting tense, or maybe some closed gestures like folding their arms or, you know, hunching their shoulders over. They never quite get relaxed. They have a hard time smiling. Start to understand their body language. The people who are a little bit more relaxed are starting to get a better feel for the relationship as it's now developed. But people who are more tense are going to take a little bit more time. That's fine. Ultimately, everybody has to get to a place where the department is moving more efficiently. Some people may not ever really get comfortable with someone who is their friend now being their boss. And if that's the case, I mean, that's okay. You can't force everybody to do it, but you can certainly provide an environment for people to get there and get there as quickly as they can. Number 3 is to discover motivations. Find out what motivates your team. What is it that they enjoy doing, or what are the things that they feel like really gives them a lot of energy when they can work on that or produce that. Discover their motivations. If you don't know what they are just by your own sleuthing, so to speak, well, ask them. What motivates you? What is it that you enjoy doing? What is it when you know that you have this in front of you, you're like, I can't wait to get started on that because this thing is fun for me? What are their motivations? Number 4, understand recognition. How do they like to be recognized? And again, if you don't know, ask them. Just ask them, how is it that you like to be recognized? And you say, this is the way, and start off with the ways that you like to be recognized, if that works, or shoot out some ideas. Do you like to be recognized in front of a group? Do you like it if I just come over and say, hey, I want to let you know you did a great job, and I really appreciate the time that you've invested in this? Do they like candy? Do they like coffee? What are the things that they like? How is it that if you want to tell them that they are a valued member of whatever the case may be, what is it that they will receive as being a great thank you? And if you don't know, just ask them. If they don't know what it is that they enjoy as far as being recognized, you can certainly give them ideas. And if they don't want to say in that moment, that's fine. But ask them, give them that as a task and say, I want to know how you like to be recognized because it's important for me to make sure that I recognize you when you've done something that's valuable. So I need to know that. Give them that task to come back with some of that feedback. And encourage them to tell you as things change. That is fine too. Number 5 is to challenge assumptions through their input in these meetings, right? Ask them to say, you know what, we've always done it what is something that we've always done a certain way, and how do you have an idea of how we can do it better? And they can choose anything that they want, but be open-minded, especially if this is something that was an idea of yours and they're like, you know what, I think it's run its course and I think we could do it better. But give them an opportunity to be contributing members to make things better such that you can start to implement that, right? Invite them to challenge assumptions. Invite them to ask why. Why is it that we do it this way? Or do you know why we do this way or that way? Whatever the case may be, invite them to challenge those assumptions. Finally, pay attention to the tone of your first meeting. In the same way that you need to pay attention to the tone of your meeting as an entire group, pay attention to your communication style, communication techniques in this first meeting, your tone. It's very hard to undo a casual tone, especially if you've had some really personal conversations with this person in the past when you were a peer, and now you're trying to transition to a supervisor, and you might appear as too high and almighty, and so you want to be much more casual. Well, and as you err too much on that way, you can undo some of the credibility that you're trying to establish. So be careful about being too casual, but also be far away from too rigid as well. Find what your appropriate balance is between the two. Now, let's look at the first month. What are some of the bigger objectives that you want to be sure to achieve as that first month? Well, remember that first day we want to be quite specific, but as we get out to this first month and beyond, we want to have target dates, or we want to be more general in some of the things that we want to try to achieve. And so in this time, in your first month, work to have an open door policy. Now, for some of you, this might be easier than others because you have no doors at your office. In fact, your office door might be just into the hallway, right? Like it says, the open door policy for some is going to be very metaphorical. The purpose of having an open door policy is to be visible. Allow people to approach you and ask that they welcome you when you need something as well. But the idea is that an open door policy makes you somebody who people can feel comfortable coming to and talking to. And as you see people who take advantage of that versus people who maybe not do it as much, you're going to get a better understanding of where your relationships stand with different people based on how they take advantage of that open door policy. But it's better to invite people to come up and approach you when they need things versus them waiting to ask you a question about something until it's too late. Have an open door policy, and as you set that example, ask them to as well, such that if you need something from them immediately, you know that you can go right up to them and ask them as well. This metaphorical idea of an open door policy should swing both ways. Then, in that first month, you also should find a mentor. You should find a mentor so that you're not trying to navigate this by yourself, so that you're not trying to navigate this alone, so that you're not having questions and having nobody to talk to. Your mentor shouldn't necessarily be your boss. You're already going to have a relationship with your boss, and they might not have, your boss isn't going to give you the same type of feedback that somebody who is a mentor would. So if you really want to be successful as you start to navigate a lot of new territory around being a supervisor, especially coming out of a peers, you need to find somebody who's a little bit different. So a couple ideas, really, I think, as far as mentors. The first thing is to find what we call a mute mentor, right? And your mute mentor is somebody who is just an example of someone you want to be like. It's not somebody you actually talk to, and you're not actually looking for feedback from them, at least verbally. For them, it's just somebody who you say, you know what, they're a boss that I really respect. And it seems like everybody that's on their team looks to them and says, gets along really well with them, and they have a good balance of, kind of being a friend, but also, getting things done. That's the type of person that I want to be more like. So find that mute mentor. What is it that they do that you like? What is it about them that draws you to them? What is it that they do such that you can identify those characteristics and you can start implementing them yourself? Second, then, is to find what I would call a mainstay mentor. And that is a person that is an actual mentor to you, that you sit down and that you have conversations with. Maybe it's your previous manager. Maybe it is actually that mute mentor, that person that you just respect. It can be the same person. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter if it's somebody internal within the organization or somebody external. It doesn't even matter. It just needs to be somebody that you can sit down and you can talk with, and that they will listen when you say, well, here's the things that I'm dealing with. If the things I feel like are going well, and here's some of the things that I'm struggling with. Do you have any input as a result? Right? There's pros and cons to them being internal. If they're internal, they understand the people a little bit more. Maybe they understand some of the political dynamics that you're working with the people around you. But then at the same time, if they're an external, then they don't know any of that stuff. And so it's just kind of a clean slate. And so their answers can be a little bit more simple. But ultimately, choose somebody that you respect, that you want to be like, that you know that when they speak, you're going to value their opinion. Find your mainstay mentor and start to meet with them once a month, once every other month, and have that dialogue with them. Then thirdly, interestingly, is what I would call an inverse mentor. An inverse mentor is someone who mentors you in reverse. Right? This is perhaps someone near you, but it's definitely not somebody on your team. It's somebody that could be a peer. It could be someone that maybe isn't a supervisor, but maybe it's on someone else's team that has a better idea of looking up to you, but you trust their input and you can get their feedback as a result. This inverse mentor is someone that can help keep you accountable, specifically when you're not following through on something. Different than having a mentor, you can say, I just don't understand why, I've asked these people to do this and they're not doing it. Well, an inverse mentor might say something more like, well, did you know that you said blank and you didn't follow through on that? Right? They might give you insight into blind spots that you have that you might not have seen originally, but they see because they're more on the level of your former peers. An inverse mentor is a great cheerleader for you, but it's also somebody who can call you out, but you need to be able to really respect their input. Find a mentor in your first month. The earlier you find your mentor, the healthier of an experience you will have navigating through your first month, which is the most difficult. So what else should you do in your first month? Well, you need to now start managing those relationships. Manage the relationships that you have around you. These relationships are going to be tough. They're going to be difficult because they were your peers. These were people that you had really casual conversations with, and now it's different. There's an elephant in the room, and it's uncomfortable because the relationship is now not the same. So how do you manage these relationships? Well, first off, you need to know that there's going to be growing for everybody. Relationships change. They can't stay the same. It's a loss for everybody, but it's part of the deal. There's going to be growing. There's going to be change. And so understand that. Even tell them in your one-on-one meetings that, you know what, I understand this is going to be a little bit difficult and a little bit awkward maybe at first. But the truth is that as much as it's awkward for you, it's awkward for me too. But we're going to need to push through that. It's going to be a little bit tough, but I'm excited for how things are going to change for the better. Second, is identifying and saying that it's going to be awkward. And if it feels awkward, it should feel awkward. But at the same time, it only remains awkward if you let it be. So don't let it remain awkward. Be bigger than awkward. Some relationship norms will be lost and they'll be replaced with awkward. You know what? That's the way it's going to be, but push through it. Be sad initially that the relationships that you had are not going to be the same anymore, but recognize it is the new norm, because the sooner you can recognize the new relationships that are going to exist, the healthier you're going to be in your new position, the healthier your former peers will be in their new role as well. Third is, as you manage relationships, is get away from playing favorites. If you're not feeling a little bit lonely and left out, you may need to distance yourself more than you are already. But if you're still feeling pretty connected with your group, likely you're feeling connected with maybe a certain group of people or maybe a certain person versus others, and then you start trending in this very dangerous direction of showing favorites over one person or one group versus other, and then you are ineffectively leading your entire team. Your team can read that very well. Your team can read who you are pulling into your office to bounce ideas off of. Your team can read very well who speaks up first in a group setting. Your team can read these things and starts to assume that there are favorites being played, even if no favorites exist. But especially coming out of a group of peers, this is much more likely to happen. Fourth is to earn trust. Do your work well. Have your peers' backs and help out. If there's an opportunity where your team is feeling overwhelmed by something, or they're feeling like they're struggling to get something accomplished, earn their trust by jumping in. And the more effective that you do your job well of leading the entire group, the more that they're going to trust you. So do your work well by accomplishing the things that you need to get accomplished yourself, and then help out the rest of the team as they need it, and you will earn their trust quickly. In so doing, you become an example to others. Remember, they're watching you, because ultimately you're following the track that they probably all want to follow themselves. They want to be in that group for a certain amount of time, and then they want to be promoted and get to your position or something similar. So they are looking at what you did, and now they're replaying in their mind all the things that you did prior to your promotion, and they're trying to think through, how can I do that myself? And as a result, they're now watching every step that you take in your current role. You are an example to others. They're watching you. Remember that you are not just floating on an island by yourself. And then finally, use what you know is unpopular from being a peer to empower others to come up with solutions. You were just part of that group. You knew what bothered everybody. So now, if there was a big pain point that every time this thing came through, start to consider that as a priority of something to address. This is an opportunity to showcase your leadership. As you manage these relationships, as you do this throughout the first month, and as you are paying attention to and working through some of the difficult things and pushing through them, the sooner you can get to a place where your department is operating as efficiently as possible. Then, as you manage relationships, you will then start to think through how to manage yourself. Right? You are an example to other people. They are watching you. So how can you manage yourself well, such that you are the leader that you want to be? Well, the first thing is to follow through on what you say. Actions speak louder than words, especially at the beginning. If you say you're going to do something in that first group meeting, or you say you're going to do something in that one-on-one meeting, or you say you do something as you are walking around and checking in with people, follow through on what you're going to say. Follow through on what you say. As you follow through on those things and you do what you said you were going to do, people start to trust you and they will follow you because they know you are leading yourself well. Second is to be humble. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. Do the things that you say you're going to do, but understand also that you are learning to be willing to say, I didn't quite get that, or didn't quite understand this yet. Be humble in your experience with this new position. Third is to establish boundaries. Make sure that people know what is okay and what isn't okay. If they come in and they have a conversation with you and you're just like, you know what, I don't think we should be talking about this, don't be afraid to say that. The sooner that they understand what your boundaries are, what you consider important and what you don't consider important, the sooner that they will learn to adjust. Don't be afraid to establish those boundaries as you are working through and getting a better understanding of the demands and priorities of your role. As such, adjust your priorities. Remember that people are now a priority for you, and people know when they are not a priority. That task that you have to do, that report that you pull, doesn't necessarily know that it's not being pulled, but people know that you're not making them a priority. So adjust your priorities and keep to your prioritization. If you want your team to be effective, and you want them to trust you, they need to be elevated in your priority list, and you need to stick with that. Number 5 is you manage yourself. Pay attention to breaks. And what I mean by that, stand up, move around. Go talk to somebody. Don't sit at your desk all day. Pay attention to breaks. You focus better when your body can get up and move and get outside. Take a break from what you're doing and then come back. But pay attention to breaks and what you allow to interrupt your time. Be specific in how you interrupt your time so you can maximize the things that are productive and valuable uses of your time. But pay attention to healthy breaks in your schedule. 6 is this idea of treading lightly. Tread lightly at first as far as it pertains to major decisions. Right? In your first 90 days is a good buffer, right? If you had an idea that when you were a manager, as soon as you did it, you were going to come in, you were going to change this, or you were going to do this. Whatever that thing is, don't do it for at least 90 days. 90 days is usually a good buffer. Don't do any major overhauls or major decisions right away. Maybe you can make a couple small decisions here and there, but wait on the bigger ones until you have more input from the rest of your group, help give yourself some time to see how that might impact things that maybe you didn't think of now that you're in the supervisor position. And maybe your manager has a different expectation now that you're in this role around that major decision that you want to overhaul or change. Right? Tread lightly on those major decisions. Number 7 is to change subtly. If you want to, change some things about your leadership style, you can change in that first month. You can change small things from on a day-to-day basis, but don't really change who you are as a person. If you want to try different things, coming in at different times, or having set meeting times or whatever, you can change some subtle things and to explore different leadership styles, but do them subtly Any major changes as far as your leadership style requires consistency for people to really buy into them. And the consistency is time passing. So if you want to change some subtle things here and there, you can, but no major overhauls. Number 9 is this, number 8 is to let your expertise go. Let your expertise go. It might be why you're promoted that you had a certain expertise in this thing, but your role is not necessarily to maintain that expertise so that people keep coming to you when they need blank. No, your role is to develop that expertise in critical thinking and leadership in others. So let your expertise go. Put it into other people such that you can work on developing that expertise in others. You can develop their ability to be good critical thinkers and problem solvers, and you can develop their own self-leadership as a result. Your priority is your people. So let your expertise go such that your expertise can be a part of your team such that you can focus on bigger things like how to develop your team into the strong department as possible. Right? Under all of this is this idea that you want to get your order of service in order. Right? Who are you serving? What is your priority? And how do you need to adjust? Your priorities were a certain way in order to get you to this point where you are today. But now that you're here, now you realign such that your order of service, the things that are most important to you, need to change. Those are the things from ahead of time to first day to first week to the first month are the things you want to consider as you are planning your first day. Now, what should I do never? Right? What are some things that I should never do as I'm making this transition from peer to supervisor? Well, first thing I would say, if you are looking at your first day, be wary of being critical. In fact, never be critical. Be wary of criticizing previous leadership. Be wary of criticizing previous processes. Those things will come naturally to you. You'll step in the position and be like, why are we doing it this way? Or, you know what, I couldn't wait to be in this position because now we can do things this way. If you want to change something, well, focus on why you're there and focus on the change that you're going to make, not on why somebody else is not. Or not on what you can finally get rid of now that such and such is gone. Don't be critical. Don't do that. Never be critical of a previous person, previous process. Ultimately, it always leads back to some other person. Be wary of being critical, especially on your first day. Also, be wary of neglecting others that helped you to get to where you are. If some other people were really supportive in you or big cheerleaders for you and now they're on your team, you really should thank them for the help that they provided in helping you get to where you are today. But understand that they might not want to be recognized in a big group. Maybe they would rather hear it from a one-on-one, but do not neglect sharing with them any appreciation you have for their contribution or being an advocate for you. Do not neglect others. The sooner that you do it, you really should do it on the first day. Find them, sit down with them, and say, I so appreciate your support for me and helping me get to where I am today. Do not neglect others. In your first month, do not, as you manage relationships, participate in gossip. Do not participate in gossip. Recognize it as soon as it's happening and stay away. Gossip is what your peers do. That's what's happening between this person and that person. Don't participate in that. Gossip forms bonds and friends between people who are close at the expense of someone that they're not close to. And as soon as you participate in that gossip, you are participating and getting close to and bonding with a small group of people at the expense of somebody else. Do not participate in gossip. The temptation for you is that you're going to know things about other people because of your role. You're going to know more things than maybe you knew before. But as a result, the temptation for you is to even initiate gossip. Don't do it. Don't participate in gossip. Notice what is happening and get out of the situation, or just stay away, and definitely never initiate it. Second, do not try to be friends. Be friendly, but do not be friends. You can be friends with your peers. You can because they are, this is the group of people that you're working with, and that's fine. But as soon as you transition to the supervisor, you can't be friends anymore. This is part of the difficulty of managing relationships. Be friendly. Be nice. Have conversations that you would with somebody that you do enjoy being around as a friend. But don't try to be friends. Just be friendly. And thirdly is don't neglect your new peers. You had peers, and now you're a supervisor, which means you now have new peers. Don't neglect your new peers. Get to know them, because they are wrestling with things that are similar to you, and they're going to have situations that are similar to you. Don't neglect your new peers. Get to know them in that first month, especially the ones that are close to you around your workspace. Then, as you manage yourself, do not let it go to your head. Right? Do not let it go to your head. Don't think that you're the manager now, and so now everybody needs to follow what I do. Right? Don't let it go to your head. Don't think that you're all high and mighty and great because of this position now. Right? It's a great way to undermine your ability to do something successfully, is to let it go to your head and let you think that you are maybe better than you really are. Don't let it go to your head. Take a humble aspect or a humble approach to the challenges that are in front of you and the things that you need to learn so that you can continuously improve and be the best manager that you can be. Second, do not assume that you're done. You have more to learn. You have another position that you can push towards. So don't assume that you're done. Don't assume that you've made it. Right? You still have room to grow, and you have a lot to learn in order to be the most effective leader. One of the hardest things for a manager to do who's been a manager for a long time is to maintain the things that they were focused on when they first became a manager. Don't assume you're done. Have a healthy respect for continuing to learn and understand what you need to do in order to be the best manager that you can be. Third is, do not think that this is a 5-step recipe to make bread. It is an evolving process that's a feeder to other topics that you need to pay attention to, such as influence, conflict, coaching, performance evaluations. Being a manager isn't just, do these 5 things and then you're good to go and here's your pumpkin bread. No, this idea of being a manager has so many different elements of things that you want to pay attention to, that you need to pay attention to, that you want to continue to learn and evolve such that you manage and change the best. Charles Darwin had a great quote that said, it's not the smartest or the strongest people or organisms that survive, it's the ones that are the most able to adapt to change. And for managers, that's certainly the case, right? It's not a 5-step process. It's the ones that can learn and change as their people and as their cultures change. And finally, do not overinvest in the person filling your role. You are going to leave a role and become a supervisor, and more than likely your role is going to be filled by somebody else. The temptation is, because you know that role better than anyone else, is to perhaps invest in that role more than anyone else. Do not overinvest in the person filling your role. Let them learn it. If they want to come and get an idea of what you did prior to them, that's fine. That's their initiative. But don't be the one who initiates that. Heaven forbid you become a micromanager. Now, finally, what should you do right now? Well, truth be told, you can do any of these things. You should be able to do any of these things right now, as long as it's not crossing any boundaries. But truthfully, if you are looking to get to this place where you want to adjust from being a peer to a supervisor, there are some things that you can start doing right now. And they're things that you can take initiative with to do as an individual contributor before you are a manager. So the first thing you should do, and it's come up several times, is this idea to be hungry. Be hungry for what? Be hungry for knowledge. Take in as much as you can in order to learn what you need to learn in order to step into this role as smoothly and succinctly as possible. Be hungry for more. Whether it's being hungry to learn more things about the department, learn things that are outside of your role, whether it's be hungry to learn more about being a manager. Maybe you need to pick up a book or something, or ask for an additional type of task. Be hungry for what more that you can learn so that you are better equipped and more well-rounded to step into a role because you know so much about different things already. Be hungry for knowledge. What else can I learn in order to make myself a better candidate and stronger individual for this role? Second is to demonstrate integrity. Integrity is what you say and do when no one is looking. Are you the same person that when you stand up in front of a group and you portray this type of person? Are you that same person when you're sitting by yourself and nobody else is looking around? Demonstrate integrity in what you do. Be a problem solver as you do it. Are you working through and trying to figure out problems, even problems that haven't been asked of you to solve? Integrity is someone who is looking for those things in order to make their contributions productive and efficient for the team already. Demonstrate integrity. Third is to start leading your team now. Assuming that this is the team that you will supervise, start leading your team now. These things that we're talking about already, getting to know them, getting to know their strengths, their weaknesses. What is it that they like to be recognized? How do they like to be recognized? What are things that are pain points for them that they struggle with? Start leading now. Start looking for problems and offering solutions. Heavens forbid that you find a solution or find a problem but don't have a solution for it. No. If you find a problem, offer a solution. Figure it out. Make things better. Start leading now. With that said, quit faking it. Quit faking it. Start being the leader you would be now. Today. Right? If you want to be that supervisor at some point, don't wait for the title to then start doing things that a supervisor would do. Quit faking it. Just do it now. If there's things that you know that you would do as a supervisor and you think you can start doing it now, then do it. Just do it. One of the best books that I believe that's out there for people who are making a transition from being a peer supervisor is this book called The First 90 Days by Michael Watkins. And what Michael Watkins does is he walks through what every new leader is going to experience, and how do you evaluate the landscape, and how do you try to understand the people that are a part of it, the organization as a whole, and how do you fit yourself into it, being strategic in your approach. If you're interested in follow-up information about how to make this transition, I would encourage you to look at this book. This book is a part of the corporate library here. I encourage you to check it out and go through it. It's an excellent read for anybody who is considering making that transition effectively from being a peer to a supervisor. So, finally, the morning doesn't have to feel like just any other morning. It can feel different. And that's okay, right? But take the apprehension out. Know what's coming. And start working on it today. Do everything on purpose. Do nothing on accident. Start being the leader you would be as a supervisor now. Start being the leader you want to be today. And you will make the transition to be a peer to a supervisor effectively. Thanks for being a part of this elective. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.